Hello everyone, this is Zebo and welcome to today's pool to pool video. So as usual, when there's a free pool event, people always ask me whether or not I can carry over my free pool from this banner to that banner, etc, etc. So I just gotta clear out this doubt so that people stop posting comments to pester me about this question. Really straightforward, free summons are given to you 10 times a day. So you will have up to 5 free summons, so this number can actually go up to 5 and you can save it for the whole of the free summon period. So in the KR server, if we base it on the timing, at the point of recording this video, right, the global server haven't really announced how long these free summons will last, so that you guys can just take a look at the event period and see whether or not it lasts until the collab banner. So for the KR side, after maintenance, which is about 2 weeks back, all the way until 11th January, which means that these 53 summons actually carry over just by the timing itself. But at the point of recording this video, number one, global server news hasn't been announced yet with regards to the free summons for the timings. And number two, KR server hasn't really patched until the Dice Great Adventures patch, so I cannot confirm. I cannot tell you guys that, hey, it's confirmed, you know, this day will carry over, because there's a chance it might disappear. So I don't want to disappoint you guys on that. So what you guys can do is probably wait until the Dice Great Adventure, because I do have an account with some free summons available. So we shall see whether or not at the point it will carry over. So that's something that I can promise you guys. But at the point of recording this video, you cannot confirm that the tickets will carry over, because there's no official news about it. You guys can see, right? There's no official news about it, but all you know is this event period is from the update until 11 January for KR server, and it should also probably be the case for the global server. So I assume with this kind of information, you can actually carry over the summon chance. So that's the comment that I'm gonna make, but nothing is confirmed yet. So we shall wait until the Dice Great Adventures patch to confirm on this piece of information. And with that, let us move on to today's pool to pool video. Let's go. So for today, it will be a little bit different. I will go back to the usual speaking instead of just voice chat. So first of all, I'll start with my boy Alef. So Alef is one of my favorite characters in the game, because he's so weak that nobody uses him, and the developer totally haven't buffed him in like months. So if you guys can hear my voice, it's really funny, because I love this character. I love that how it actually counters the range side just off the party buff. But the thing is, even if its party buff was meant to counter the range teams, it doesn't do his job as well. So it's really funny when you have this specific character design that doesn't even work. So for Alef, he's a 2.5 for Arena. Why? Because he's usable there if you are in certain maps where everyone is using range units. But other than that, he's pretty shit. So I'll just give him 2.5 because he's one of my favorite unit, and there's a bit of bias there. And then I give him 2 in Colosseum, because you can use him offensively against full range teams. Even though right now the meta is more melee favored to a certain extent, but range will always be a thing in Colosseum, so he's definitely usable there to a certain extent. So 2 points. But for the rest of the other categories, it's a 1 point, because very straightforward, Alef doesn't offer any team buffs, doesn't offer any insane damage, doesn't offer anything else other than his defense reduction, or rather range defense party buff, which is not even that good in most scenarios. So that's why he's not really good. Very skippable unit, but he's still my buff boy in my heart. Next up, let's talk about Tinia. So Tinia is a 1 for Arena in 3v3, because she's very frail. She does have decent damage output, but in most cases she will actually die before you do much to your enemies. You can just simply slot her in a full range team and see whether or not you can kill your opponent before they kill you. But in most cases, her normal attack doesn't pass through walls. Her weapon skill is not very easy to chain, and he doesn't hit as hard as a lot of the other range attackers. So I'll just give her a 1 there. Don't use her, like she's not super good there. Then for Colosseum, she's a 2 because she's definitely usable with a range buff, which is very universal, as well as a defense reduction in her Sigma. it is actually a okay unit to try to use. But like I mentioned earlier, there's just a lot of other units with the range damage buff, and there's a lot better. MK99, Kamel, Lina. So Tina sort of falls off there a bit, so that's the issue with Tina. But for the other aspects which you need a lot of damage, right? Raid, Expedition, and co-op or defensive co-op, Tina is amazing. I'll give her a 5 for those, because her party buff is universal. She has a defense buff that is really useful in stages where you need to reduce the defense of the bosses. And lastly, her damage output is not the best, but is pretty decent as well. And also, one more thing to take note of is that there's a lot of elemental bows for different units, right? You have fire for Clara, you have water for Garum, you have light for Gabriel, you have earth for Tina. So there's a bunch of bow options for her to slot her into the various teams for different elements. So that's why she's amazing for all these raid, co-op, and expedition damage related game modes. Now, next one we have Christmas Spirit Carol. So Carol, in my honest opinion, is a really good light unit in general. I give her a generically good score across the board because number one, for Arena she's a 5 because she's probably one of the better melee light units running around, because light unit used to be insanely powerful in the meta. Like there's Future Princess, there's MK99, even Gabriel was really viable, but right now they just don't see as much use. So Carol is probably the only light arena unit that consistently sees use, and her party buff is amazing. She's a really amazing dogfight unit. She chains really quickly as well. So all these aspects adding up together gives her a 5 for this category. In terms of 3v3, I give her a 4, not because she's bad, but because she's very short range. So in 3v3, I think there's a lot of runner comms. There's a lot of triple tank comms that just runs around, drags out the time, and stops you from killing them. So she is strong there, but she might not be as good due to how the game mode plays out in different scenarios and how the map layout actually is. So the short attack range is one problem for her. With very little chasing capability, you're probably going to just run after your opponent if they decide to just run around the whole map for the whole game. So for Colosseum side, light, mono light is just really powerful, right? You have Gabriel, Eleanor, Mark 99, and Future Princess, and it's hard for you to find a slot to slot Carol in. And if you put her in the melee teams, she's not very good because of melee AI. Without the additional line to chase after the back line, Carol is not so good melee unit for Colosseum. So that's that. But in terms of raid, expedition, and co-op, she's very usable there. So for raid, the reason why she's not a 5 is because there's no light melee team that's really amazing yet, and light in raid is not very strong. So I don't recommend people to use it unless you really need it for the dark bosses. But if you do need it for dark bosses, Carol is okay because her party buff is crit hit chance, very powerful, and she has a light resist down, which is always useful against bosses. So the same applies to expedition and co-op. She has decent party buff as well as a decent kit to buff the other light units teammate, but she's not like a top tier option because she's very reliant on the team to be melee to maximize her potential. So that's what I'll say about Carol. And with that, let us move on to the next Christmas spirit. Next up, we have Rue. So for Rue's case, I'm pretty sure you guys have experienced these manners known as Mono Earth in your PvP or your Colosseum ranks. In short, Rue is an insanely powerful standalone unit with a party buff that is very restrictive, buffing only the earth side. So that is her biggest drawback, and that is flexibility in terms of team building. But as a standalone unit, she's insanely powerful. She is one of the strongest dogfight unit you can find in the game if you don't find a solution to deal with her in the arena side. So I give her a 4 because she's very powerful there if you have mono earth and if you have a decent gear setup. But she is not very flexible in terms of team building. So outside of butting her with earth units, she's not very powerful. Like, she's strong but not maximized in terms of her potential. So that's one thing that I don't really like about her party buff. And in terms of 3v3, like I mentioned earlier, she's just very limited by her party buff. Very powerful unit, but her attack range is also very short, so might not be very good for big map setups in 3v3 setting, except for like King of the Hills or maybe survive until the end game mode. But that will also sort of limit you into an earth setup, so That's something which I don't like, and that's why I'm just giving her a 3 there. So in terms of Colosseum, same thing, mono off, very powerful, charges after the backline, disrupt the backline and allow your Mariel or Camille to dish out the insanely powerful weapon skills and then kill your enemy from there. So mono off is very usable in all the different game modes, and Rue is a very good unit in that team. So that's why I give her like 3-4 across the board. But for Colosseum side, one thing about Colosseum is that you have to attack and defend. So if you put mono off as a defense, you probably need a lot of stats to overpower like other teams with Linas or fire units in their setup. So if you do not have it, you're going to lose a lot of time because Lina is very prevalent and Lina is very powerful in Colosseum. So mono off, despite being really powerful, is sort of tame there. And for co-op, raid and expedition, Rue is strong, but she doesn't offer much in terms of the damage buff component because her kit doesn't have any resist down, doesn't have any attack boost to your team setup. So that's why I cannot give her higher as accordance to the other units, because other units offers so much more to the team compared to Rue. Despite Rue being an insanely powerful standalone unit with a very unique party buff, but she's very limited by the fact that she's a very solo type unit. And the last unit is Tinia's sister Parvati. So Parvati definitely puts in work at Kong Studios because she receives some of the biggest buffs in Guardian Tales history, making her insanely powerful in various aspects of the game. So before her buff, Parvati was rarely seen anywhere. Like, she was extremely underpowered, even though she has a pretty unique mechanic to chase after the backline, and she does have a pretty decent weapon skill and animation in terms of attacking to make her viable in arena, but she wasn't really used until the very recent buffs in the last 2 months, right, that made her insanely powerful. So in Colosseum right now, she's one of the strongest unit because she has the ability to put down a wire which slows down the weapon skill regen speed of other units, namely the leader of the opponent team. And secondly, there's a lot of water units that are insanely powerful there, like Ara, like Veronica right now. So in the future, there's going to be more water units that are very powerful, and Parvati is going to be a good answer because she will chase after them and then kill them ASAP. And on top of that, because right now Bev has the ability to chase after the backline, combine that with Parvati's ability to chase after the backline, these two makes one of the strongest Colosseum pairs in terms of the mini-team setup, or rather the only viable Colosseum pair against the different teams in the Colosseum setup. So that's why I give Parvati a 5 there. Insanely good in Colosseum, and she can go into a lot of different team setup. And for Arena and 3v3, she's a 5 and 4 because her kit is basically really straightforward. You slow down your opponent's weapon skill and you try to chain them faster than they can chain you. So that's how she works out. And she's also one of the off units which people don't think about at first sight. So in Masters Arena, people will usually ban out Camille or Mariel first. In fact, I myself do that as well. And Parvati will be one of the unit which people will forget. But then nowadays, as she's getting more and more attention, you know, she's getting more banned often, and yeah, she's an insanely amazing unit in terms of the PvP side as well. But for 3v3, like I mentioned earlier, for Carol and Rue, she is very short range in terms of attack, so you have to sort of chase after your opponent, and that sort of drops her value for me. And for co-op and expedition and raid, I think she's okay. She does have a pretty decent damage output and a very powerful party buff. So for normal co-op, she's amazing. For defensive co-op, still usable, but not the best. And for raid and expedition, same thing, usable but not the best, because party buff is good, very decent damage output, but not the best unit for the job. So that's why she's only a 2.5 there. Okay, so in conclusion, this banner I'll say like has its strong units and its bad unit. You have insanely amazing units like Parvati and really weak ones like Alef. But overall, you guys can actually wait for the Dice Great Adventure banner to drop to decide whether or not you want to commit your pulls on this banner itself. So that is my advice I'll give, and that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for tuning in to the end, and as usual, please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.